Hello.
There you are, you handsome bugger. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Nice, 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 nice. All right. And I'm going to, and the gigs are, what's the dates of the, it's like the 28th, 29th, something like that?
The 28th at the Aloha Theater and the 29th in Hilo.
Nice, at the Palace. Look at you.
Yeah.
It's member supported Hawaii Public Radio. All things considered, I'm Dave Lawrence, and grateful that you're joining us. Today we have a very special guest coming on board the program, Aloha Theater, on the 28th, 29th at the Palace Theater in Hilo. It's the great Peter Rowan, who we've been hearing about on the community calendar. Hey, Peter, how are you?
Doing well. You caught me. I'm just mixing some tracks that I laid down in Honolulu with some players over there.
Oh.
So it's good luck that you called, man. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for taking the call, and share a little bit about what the recording is and who's on it.
Yeah. People I've met over the last few years in my travels over to the islands. Doug Tolentino on ukulele, Jeff Ahoy on the acoustic slide guitar, and myself and a buddy named Kylan on acoustic guitar, and Uncle Mike on the bass, and just going through the stuff. In 4 hours, we put down as much as we could, and so I've just been sorting it out, and I've got a couple of them with the help of a great editor. I've got a couple of them shaped up. Yeah, so
Dig it.
it's ongoing. Yeah, now I'm working on the solo guitar pieces to kind of go with this, and then probably do one more session over in Honolulu, or who knows where it'll be actually.
Is that what you do? You come over here and do the sessions here?
Yeah, yeah. It's a real immersion into everything that goes with the music and the history and the culture and the players and everything. And super, super nice people. And when I was over there last time, I met Cyril Pahanui, and he treated me like an old friend, and I've never met him before, but I think, we're all brothers of the musical journey, and it's like that, It was great. I love meeting all the folks, bridging the gap between the generations in the Hawaiian side of, I would say, our common music, which is acoustic, based music. The young Peter Moon Jr. was there playing with Cyril, as was Jeff Ahoy on the steel guitar. And so we went to the studio, and it's all acoustic. We kind of forewent we're back before the invention of electricity, basically, trying to make this music.
Well, one of the things next time you're going to be coming through, you got to drop in. We have this Atherton Performing Arts Studio, and even with or without an audience, holds about 75 people. Really nice acoustics. I was just in there with Roger McGuinn from the Byrds the other day. Had Hot Tuna in there a couple weeks ago.
It's your studio right there at the radio station, right?
Yeah.
I love that room. That is the best.
Yeah, that's so next time you're going to come, you got to just drop me a line. We'll do something. We'll hang out. We'll even just to record it, get you on tape, have some fun. It would be fun to do.
Yeah, maybe even could do a little bit of the record itself.
That's what I'm saying. You never know what could be a great facilitator. It's right here in town. It's a great room. You know the room. So I just put because you're not going to hit. You're going right to the Big Island. I understand, right, for this next thing.
This time I am, yes.
Yeah, well, it'll be for a future. Now you have some incentive to.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, brother. You're welcome. You know what else we have in common, which is I was hoping to explore a little bit with you. Which hospital were you born at in Boston?
I was born in the Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital. You lived right around the corner from Mass General for a number of years.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I had the privilege of getting to work at WBCN, which I don't know.
Yeah.
I figured you would probably have some memory of, but you never know. Sometimes you throw that one.
Yeah, back in the days, in the 60s and maybe up through the 70s, BCN was the hip station. Well, I think it's still going, actually, but it's more of it's not really underground radio like it was back then. It's kind of whatever.
It got blown out, actually. CBS eventually pulled it off the
Oh,
air, put the call letters down in North Carolina, but it did have a very long life, and it's hard to believe a legendary progressive rock station that was one of the founders of the format could ever go under, especially
yeah.
considering the financial viability that they had for a long time. But you know how the business went. But so, how long did you live in Boston before you skedaddled?
Well, I was there going to school, and when I was 18, I hit the road with a friend of mine, and we went all the way out to California, and I was looking for where bluegrass lived, and so on our way back, came to Missouri and all these different places up through D.C., and bluegrass was sort of happening back then in this underground way. It was like a kind of a secret music. Walter Hensley, a great banjo player, was playing in a little dim bar over in Baltimore. But you'd go there, and everybody who was there, gosh, Jack Cook was there, and he had a flashy gold like a bullfighter's jacket, and he had just come back from working with Bill Monroe, and he hadn't joined Ralph Stanley yet. And but you'd meet these guys at these gigs, right? You'd be sitting there in this little lounge in the bar, and it was music lovers only. It's like the back room where the music was happening. It was a small area.
It was kind of like a little secret thing at that point. Huh?
Yeah. And then there was the Shamrock over on M Street in D.C., and that's where groups like the Country Gentlemen played. I saw Scotty Stoneman there. In fact, that was hair-raising, fiddle playing. But the thing about all those guys, they all had different lives than the lives you saw on stage. On stage, they didn't expect great adulation. In fact, there was a kind of little bit of an attitude on their part of the bluegrass musicians because they knew that they were playing some of the best music around and they weren't getting any recognition. But they're a little cocky, like. But that made bluegrass great in those days. And do you know that Peter Moon Jr.'s dad played banjo in the States? Peter Moon Jr. showed me a picture of his father in Ohio in a bluegrass band. Yeah, he's playing 5-string banjo.
Oh, it's crazy roads, dude. Things connect.
No, I'm telling you, man. And it's really kind of cool that way. I don't know.
Oh, that's what I like.
Like an Appalachian Hawaiian connection somewhere.
That's a cool way of putting it. I've never heard it. It'd be like Appalachian Ko'olaus kind of thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's from the same roots. A lot of it from the same roots. Just the island music has its own special quality.
Yeah,
but,
that's the thing.
Whatever was country music was Hawaiian music at one point. Yeah, when Jimmy Rogers, had Joe Kaipo playing steel in his band. And his first hit record was "Everybody Does It in Hawaii," which is like a ragtime tune.
You've got a nice historical perspective and a real connection, and it is cool to bridge the ukulele playing and the steel guitar and the other things that are in that island vein with, like you said, there's a strong connection. As I say to some people, sometimes when we get away from music and are just talking about people and cultures and in interviews, we divide ourselves a lot more than we really need to. There's so much about everyone's thing that's, it's like we're all the same person, kind of. And one of you were talking about the unusual connections, and there's one that you have that leads to a few different places. It's Earth Opera and long time ago, but critical cats coming together, including David Grisman with you.
Yeah, David and I played together for about 10 years. When I left the Bill Monroe Bluegrass Boy Band, David and I hooked up, and we thought we were going to play bluegrass, but I had written all these songs in Nashville that they were a little different than country and bluegrass. So David and I formed this band, Earth Opera, and we spent a lot of our time opening shows for the Doors, which was, quite a jump in styles. We were kind of acoustic and for a while, and then as soon as we get those gigs with the Doors, we added drums and just kind of went crazy after a while, just out there playing in rock. concerts.
That's a huge no. The connection. How did you end up getting all those gigs opening for the Doors? Is that a management thing? Who was it that?
Yeah, there was Elektra Records got us hooked up with APA Agency.
Got it.
And APA had the Doors, plus they were label mates. They were on Elektra Records, And I mean, I must say, as strange as it would have seemed at the time, they really were working hard to put us out there. They believed in us, That was the thing. When you got signed back then, they believed in us. Nobody believes in anything or anybody anymore. But back then, that was the first sign that you could work with the record company. Do they believe in you? Yeah, okay. Not that it got any easier to get tour support. In fact, the big surprise was all those lavish dinners and stays in the Mayflower Hotel were against your record royalties. But anyway, we learned.
Right, exactly. They're just sucking that back in the future. That's a reality about.
Yeah, but they were. The music business is a funny place because they call it a business. It's not really a business. It's sort of, I don't know. It's sort of you're dealing with, you have a commodity, maybe a record or a CD or something like that, or not even that anymore. But music itself, kind of, how can you buy and sell, I mean, we do it, but, you know what I mean? Music
I know. It's like radio.
Quality.
It's like
radio. Bought or sold, really.
It's like radio because it's something that exists in real time, I guess, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I know. It's a kind of a charmed existence we live.
Right. So tell me, what was, because I got to have a bunch of different things. God bless him. Ray Manzarek was part of the program a few different times. And,
oh, yeah.
And Robbie has been part of the program, and never John Densmore, but, and obviously not Jim because I'm not old enough. But so because you had that very special experience, and I would not be treating my listeners properly if I did not explore it with you. The Jim Morrison time that you spent around him, did you get to hang with him, talk to him? Got any stories, any memories that are helpful?
No, we never partied. It was just backstage during the shows. And sometimes we'd have a shared dressing room, and some all these places, art centers, they were theaters, theater in the round. Rock was all this new deal, what rock music they called it, rock and roll. Any place you could play was a good place to play.
I get you. So no personal encounters with him that are remarkable that paint a picture of an experience.
Well, I mean, only in that we were professionals doing our job, and he was hungry to do his job. And then he got out there, and he would sort of disappear into the Jim Morrison persona, which was
a trip.
He's not the same. He's not the same guy you met backstage, but
Wow.
He always knew when I was there. I'd be sitting in the front row before we worked with him, and people. I can get you into the show, really. Oh yeah, you're going to be on the same label, so you might as well go to the show. And so But Jim, he was a professional. I don't know. I mean, people want to mythologize everybody, but he was a total professional.
I think he was just I think there is an aspect of mythologizing, but there's also when people have a short-lived presentation and they make a big impact, there can be a level of curiosity that I think is natural because of when you look back into the realm of what happened and who was who. He was, and they were a unique operation. They fused a few different sounds together, kind of like you. You've done a lot of different sounds that have come into one thing. Another guy, completely different, but also important. Obviously, Jerry, Old and in the Way. When I was in high school, people just loved that record. They just sit around and play it. What led to that, and are there memories of that stick out?
Well, I'd like to say one other thing about Jim Morrison, and what people
Please.
Don't understand about his whole thing is that he had paid dues for some number of years and was, already beginning to suffer from a kind of fatigue.
What's that?
Sorry, no, they're making some dubs for me for this recording. Jim Morrison was, he had worked at it. He didn't just arrive fresh from the West Coast. They had done months and months and months, maybe even years of performance playing in L.A. They were a phenomena in L.A., right? They began to really draw.
Mm-hmm.
when they came to the East Coast, nobody really. When the first record had come out, and so they were charismatic, you know. Jim had practiced that in front of everybody for a number of years.
Developed it.
Yeah. So I mean, he was a professional. He had worked really, really hard.
What years was it, Peter? Was it late 60s into 70? About what year was it? Was it that you were doing that?
Well, let's see, 68, 69.
Okay. Oh, no?
Yeah, I think we were signed in 68. I came back from Bill Monroe's Southern experience in early 67. So by the end of 67, David and I had already started playing the music, and the producer came up from New York and listened to us, and there's a sense of newness about everything at the time.
Right.
And, there's so much what we called hype around everything. For instance, just to go play music live, there'd be so much of this crazy scattered energy, everything from the drugs and the alcohol, and we're all in our 20s, and the girls are young, and it's very, very distracting, really, actually.
Right.
With Jim, he was moving. I never got to know him that well, but I was just impressed that he was working just like we were. He's working man. And then with working with Jerry, I left the East Coast after the Earth Opera was over, and Dave Grisman moved out to California with my two brothers, who started producing them for Columbia Records. And it was like, oh my God, it was a whole other scene. But they had a place in Stinson Beach, and I used to crash there when I was out on the road with a band called C-Train. And C-Train featured a fiddle-playing friend of mine, Richard Green, who'd been in the Bluegrass Boys when I was there. In fact, I had gotten Richard in the band because, Bill Monroe responded well to young players, people that were really trying to, make something of themselves. Again, it's kind of a professional relationship, but I mean, with Bill Monroe and with all these guys, there's a sense of magic about what they do because they're the leaders of their genre. And so Jerry Garcia lived up on the hill in Stinson Beach, and David and I would, we'd be barefoot down on the beach, sitting on the porch playing music. And one day David said, hey, Garcia lives up the hill, and I know him, and he likes to play. I said, really? And then Jerry, to me, I didn't know him that well, except that we had both recorded this song, Cold Rain and Snow. And we went up there to Jerry's house, and they had this sign outside that said Sans Souci, which I think means no problem, without hassle. And Jerry at the time the Grateful Dead weren't touring. So he was just a happy guy, man. He was home, and he didn't have any pressure. He had three young daughters living with him, and a wonderful mountain girl, and his lady, and everything was great. I mean, and they had a little studio for Jerry, and he recorded his own. He did a lot of his work on this album called Garcia, and he graced my efforts by recording Mississippi Moon. And he's the guy who told me that the new writers of the Purple Sage were looking for material, and why didn't I just go by their rehearsal space? I said, me just show up, and he said, yeah, man, I'll let Nelson know you're coming. So I went over there, and I sang them Panama Red and Lonesome L.A. Cowboy, and whatever at the time I was working on, and they were like, oh yeah, that's it. And Norbert Putnam produced that record for Columbia Records, of all labels, The Adventures of Panama Red. So, and that was my first foray into the not getting paid part of the music business.
Right.
And so, people just get crazy around money, and it's enough to make you just lose all heart. But, I remember Bill Monroe, you know, standing behind me and just bearing down his, into his eyes, into the back of my head. And he would say things like, "Don't ever give up, Pete." And I thought, I'm in my early 20s. Give up what? I am music. This is what I do, But what he knew that young players don't always know, although nowadays players, it's so dismal out there and bleak. Nowadays players, they reach a kind of equanimity before they're successful. You know what I mean? And then of course, they're the ones that get the heavy duty treatment, the star treatment, and then that's a struggle in itself. But to come out to the West Coast from the East Coast and from a bluegrass master like Bill Monroe, and to jump in with Jerry Garcia and his whole crowd out here, they're much more casual about things, and it was easy to play with Jerry because you just got the feeling that he was really there just to play along. You guys leave the songs out. I want to have fun with this, right? He didn't have to sing all the lead. That was a big deal. He had an actual bluegrass band that he could play with, and then adding Jerry Garcia. I mean, Vassar Clements. Adding Vassar was like,
right.
Now you have bluegrass. Because, Vassar had recorded the new Mule Skinner Blues with Bill Monroe, and Vassar was only like 14 or something like that. He was coaxed along and taught by Chubby Wise, who was the original bluesy fiddler that played with the Bluegrass Boys in the late 40s. And so Vassar, he came along in the 50s, and he was with Bill for a while. And then, he kind of ran the gamut of what a fiddle player could do in those days, and that was you work your way up through country music, and you end up in Vegas with the Judy Lynn show. Judy Lynn was like a Western swing, super country. You know what I mean? It was Vegas. It was a Vegas act. And so Vassar went out there, and then he just kind of let it go. And so when we got a hold of Vassar, we had all this. We had guys hungry. Me and Grisman were hungry. Jerry was not, he was about to start getting busy with the Grateful Dead again, but he was in good shape. He was rested. And you had Vassar Clements, who, you could hear tapes of Vassar playing for fun at parties. In fact, that's how I knew that he was still playing. Somebody had played me a tape when me and the Bluegrass Boys had this traditional thing in bluegrass is to have breakfast at someone's house at 2:30 in the morning. And they were playing these Vassar tapes, and it was like unreal. This was down in Alabama, So I called Rule Yarborough up, and I said, do you still have Vassar's number? And they said, yeah. So I called Vassar, and now you had Jerry Garcia, who's just like a bundle of joy. Me and Grisman just like, can you believe it? We're actually getting work playing bluegrass. John Kahn, extraordinary bass player, and the master, Vassar Clements. And so, to me, I'm always surprised when people tell me that, you guys only played for a year. I think we only played out publicly for a short time, but we played music all the time. All the time. We'd be up at Jerry's house every night playing music, and his lady, Mountain Girl, loved it, and she kept saying, this is the best thing for Jerry. Garcia really needs this.
Like therapy.
If only I had known how much he needed it,
Right. Yeah, you could have been doing him a service. I dig what you're saying. Before I wrap it up with you, you mentioned it a couple times, but I didn't really get any story about it, and it's such a cool jam. Panama Red. Can you talk about that one coming together?
Yeah. It was the summer of Woodstock, and these guys came by in a bus full of people, an old van full of people, and said, "We're going. You want to go?" And I was living in New Hampshire, and I quit the road and everything. I was 25.
Where in New Hampshire?
Up above Greenfield, near Peterborough.
Wow.
Yeah. You're from New England?
I lived in Boston for like 12 years, and I actually spent 1 year in college at New England College in Henniker, New Hampshire. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, New Hampshire had its own little hippie scene.
Right.
It was
right.
very, very crunchy, very organic. And I forgot what. Oh, Panama Red. So, yeah, I said, well, I don't think I'm going to go to this Woodstock deal. It seems like an ordeal. Of course, they all came back, reborn from the experience. So I went down to Cambridge and just played on the streets that weekend because I had met a guy. There are all these wanderers at that time. And this guy named David Landon was playing on the streets, and he was very affable, very like, "Oh, I caught your eye. Oh, hey, what do you do?" So we started hanging out. And Panama Red made an appearance around that time. It was the jazz musicians in Boston that had the connection for recreational, spiritual sport. And so I thought, wow, that'd be interesting to go out in the streets and see what would take place, but really the streets tiring, very tiring. So
was that like Harvard Square?
Yeah, exactly. There in Harvard Square. And I remember going out there and singing that day. And, one thing the streets will do is it'll teach you big about your motivation and how you reach a crowd and how to maintain integrity and not ruin your voice and, integrity of your material. Try and bring the people in, make them listen. And so we were taking a break in an apartment nearby, and we sort of had this 8-hour euphoric jam session, and that's how the song came out of that.
Wow. Written right in Harvard Square.
Right in Harvard Square.
I dig it. Wow, that's just that's a special place for me too, dude. I have so many memories when I first moved there. Met a girlfriend there. One time there was a preacher, because there's everything. There's everybody from you guys playing to there's magicians. There's every kind of entertainment in Harvard Square on all those little corners. And one of them was like a preacher guy, and he was Harvard intellectual kind of people were debating him, and so he was like reading scripture, and they were debating, and there was this big crowd, and I met a chick. We ended up being girlfriend boyfriend for 7 years. So it was like right there at one of those performances in Harvard Square.
There you go.
So that's huge. Well, I got to tell you, dude, when next time you're going to be in Honolulu, you got to reach out and don't miss the opportunity to come by, because not only it'll be a great hang, but we'll get some food, we'll have some people in the studio, and it'll just be nice.
I'll do it. Yeah, that'll be fun.
I would really like that. So we'll make something happen in the studio musically that'll be cool. And
Aloha, friends. It's Peter Rowan, and you're listening to my friend David Lawrence on Hawaii Public Radio. Thanks for listening. Aloha, friends. Peter Rowan here, and you're listening to the good DJ David Lawrence on Hawaii Public Radio. Mahalo.
Fantastic. All right, cuz. So stay in touch. Don't be a stranger. If anything changes and you're going to be here for the thing, I know that's probably not going to happen. But the next time you're going to be doing a Honolulu jaunt, get in touch ahead of time and let me know, and let's hook something up.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, David.
I'm giving you a big hug. You're quite welcome, Peter. Peter Rowan, he's coming to town. We're really lucky to have him at the Palace Theater. We're really lucky to have him the 28th, Aloha Theater, 29th, Palace Theater, and, of course, here on the airway with us at All Things Considered. Be safe, Peter. Travel safe.
Thank you, brother. Aloha.
Aloha. Bye.